Good, how are you?
Yeah, two things.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming. Good to see everybody. If we can all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And thanks to the folks sitting in the front row. Okay, I just want to briefly just want to acknowledge that it is Staff and Teacher Appreciation Week, and on behalf of the board, just want to thank all the staff and teachers who do just take on an incredible job every day and really make this the great district that it is. So thank you all for that. And I think there's different events going on all week, so thank you. We'll go straight into it here. I was worried no one was going to show up, but it did cloud over, so that was made it. It got cool off, so it made it a little easier for people to show up. We're at the public session. Anyone from the public who would like to make a comment? No. Okay. Then what we're going to do is it's the second reading and approval of our fiscal year 2023 school budget. And folks, this is an action item. We talked a lot about it last Monday. We have a couple scenarios that were brought back to us that we had said we wanted to look at and consider what we wanted to vote on. I think a lot of it has to do with maybe not so much whether we're going to fund two positions, but how we're going to fund two positions. And there's also the caveat of how we might fund putting $40,000 back into the non-labor, if that's still something the board wants to look at. So it's really about how to fund it, I think is where people were at. And if that changes, fine, but that's where we are going into this discussion tonight. So the two are, and let's just make sure we know what we're looking at here. Patrick, can you just tell us which two, what's what here?
Yeah, the 3.03 on local contribution has the Dean of Students in it. And then the 3.57, the other one, has the Dean of Students and the RTI coordinator.
So at this point, neither of these has put the $40,000 back in, right? That would be something we'd have to do.
No, and Deb does have a couple other versions with her tonight if the board wants to go in that direction. As for the, again, 3.03, the Dean of Students is in there. I think if the board did go with the 3.57, which has the RTI, that does, free up, I guess I would say, some of the ARP money. So I don't feel like in that 3.57 version, if that's the way the board goes, that we would need to add money for, additional equipment and supplies in case we ran short next year because of price increases, because the money we could set aside that money for that purpose. But
okay, so is everyone clear on that? That would be a possibility, which I think Meg had brought up, asking if there would be another way to fund that shortfall. And what's nice about that is if you don't have to put it in the budget, a lot could depend on the market. So if we don't find other money or it gets that much more expensive for certain equipment, then we could fund it through the grant. Yeah, Jen?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the logic behind that. If we have more expenses next year, no matter how we do these two things, wouldn't we still have more ARP money available to use? I mean, using it for the new position, does that use up everything that we have? I guess I don't understand.
Go ahead.
I mean, Katie can speak to that too. I mean, we do have, I think we've sent it to you guys a couple times. Katie just revised it just recently, but we have our staffing in there. We have our other projects in there. So right now we are, close to our projection, we can always change different projects, but right now our projection of getting to that 4 million by 2024 does have staff in there, does have equipment, does have the projects like we're doing at Phippsburg, Woolwich, and Dyke Newell. So there's a lot of, has some RTI components other than the RTI coordination. So there's, all of that is kind of, I guess I would say, accounted for, but there always can be, some changes.
I think what we're looking at, because as you had said last time, Jen, just to make sure we're all on the same page, when you had said what you were for was dean of, and maybe you've changed, but dean of students, and that if we were going to put the RTI, you had said you would prefer if we funded it through the grant, knowing we'd ultimately probably put it in the budget because we're trying to build infrastructure. But right now, the 3.57 scenario actually would put the RTI in the budget. And so all I was saying is, because then there was also discussion, people were asking about some of the equipment, some of the other costs that had to do with non-labor. And so then it came up, well, how would we do that? So we were just saying, if you went this scenario, you could use some of that grant money that you weren't going to use for those, a one-time thing for those, if we wanted to.
No, I understand.
Okay.
Thank you, Lou.
All right.
I
I was
just
just
didn't
making sure.
understand the word, how Patrick was phrasing
Oh,
it.
okay.
It seemed like all of a sudden we wouldn't have any money available
Oh,
from
no,
ARP
no, I see. No.
to be able to do that in the future. So I was just trying to
No,
understand.
we have it. Just want to make sure everybody's on the same page before we just start the discussion. So would anyone like to go first in commenting on where we are and where you think we should go? Lorna?
Yeah, I'll go because I wasn't here last week, and I'll try not to be repetitive because I did not watch the recording either. So sorry. But I did see the letter that we got from Woolwich asking or advocating that we fund the RTI through federal funds. And so I just had a couple questions and wanted some discussion. So the first question, if it hasn't been covered already, is, Jamie, you might have mentioned this a few meetings ago, but this is the RTI coordinator is a master level educator position. And so Patrick and Katie, is there concern on filling such a highly qualified position on a potentially temporary basis? That's one concern.
Yeah, we talked about that at length last time about how, I mean, we don't know, but when you have to post something and say it's federally funded and just going to be 2 years, hopefully it would be longer, but we couldn't be sure. There's going to be a different applicant pool for sure.
And considering how competitive the market is too, I think that's kind of not a pro on somebody's pro and con list. And then the other thought on that was, I looked back, Deborah, thank you for this awesome list of how the federal funds are funding staffing positions. I looked back to see, so Woolwich currently, we have a middle school teacher for year 1, and then 2 interventionists for year 1 and 2. And the reality is, again, I would suspect we're going to want to maintain those positions, which would also be put back into the budget in fund year 25. So we're looking at 300,000 average right there. And then the other thing too is a reminder that fund year 25 is another negotiation year too. So while I appreciate wanting to use federal funds to lessen the blow on the tax burden, we know where we're going to be in fund year 25. And this just seems like a position that isn't sort of a temporary position. It seems like something that is going to be around for a while. So those are my 2 cents on it. Certainly other people can weigh in.
Thank you. Anyone else? Jennifer, did you want, or Jim?
I guess what I've done is I've been thinking about that specific question, Lorna, about, how this impacts the candidate and how our costs, will be present in the future. And so I guess I would look at that in the way that any position that we fund now is in one budget 1 year. Doesn't mean that it's going to be in the budget the next year. 2, that we funded other teaching positions, with COVID money. And I think that we'll hopefully that we will be able to fund those in the future, but we didn't put those in our budgets and not use funding for those. We did use funding for filling positions that we needed, especially kind of because of the COVID academic struggles for students, that I think that this is, truly the RTI coordinator could truly be most beneficial right now because of that impact. We don't know what the needs will be in the future. I know that it's going to be a large impact for the future, but hopefully in the future, hopefully we'll have maybe not as significant a recession going on with food and basic issues for people's budgets will not be as extreme as they are now. So that will also, I think it's kind of like the stock market. We're gambling on what could happen to the future. And I agree that it's an important position, and I hope that we can continue to afford it the way we can I hope we can continue to afford the dean of students, the social worker, the assistant Morris, or the social workers, or any of the positions that we come to we need. I hope we can continue to fund them. But I think every year we look at this budget with the viewpoint of, what resources do we have? What can we do? And I think those change from year to year in terms of what our student body needs and our community needs. So I think we don't really know where we're going to be in 2025, and we may not, may not have a very different needs. So when I was trying to explain this to some residents who aren't necessarily, we're property taxpayers, but are not consumers of our education, they kind of came back with this, wait, we have funding for it. That means my property, I won't have increased property tax because of it. And it's a very basic question, I know, but it's that question I think of most people when they look at something like this, and to say, wait, if we have funding already, why are you reaching your hand out to me and asking for more? So I know it's not that simplistic as an answer, but I think that's also an important way at least to consider that when we're thinking about the taxpayers who don't necessarily consume our education. So I guess that was just where I'm coming with in terms of considering things. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. Jamie, did you? Oh, okay, you go first, and then Anita after Jamie.
Sure. I think, I have a little bit different way of thinking about it. If we have so many right now teachers and social work positions that are being funded with the ARP money, and knowing that the RTI, while it will benefit students who have just gone through a pandemic, to me it seems more of something that has been talked about much longer than the pandemic. It would be a position that we would be funding, hopefully, regardless of a pandemic, and that we would use the ARP money to be able to address things that are being caused right now because of inflation. So to me, in my head, it makes more logical sense to fund the RTI position that we know that we need. I also come from a position where in my day work, I see the need for this for students that I serve. So I understand sort of the critical need for this RTI coordinator. And that we could use, as long as, making sure that Bath Tech would be able to use ARP money, easily accessing that funding for things that are more expensive. I am very concerned about next year's budget, and even more concerned for the year after that, what that's going to look like. I know that other districts are struggling with the same issue. I read 2 articles of districts in Maine in our community that are over 4% increase, and they also have a lot of COVID funds available to them. So I think that a lot of work has gone into this budget to be very conservative. A lot of people have taken the time to really fine tune what they were asking for. I continue to support locally funding the RTI, and that is a difficult decision because I know that it does increase taxes, and especially in Pittsburgh. And I think I just wanted to make sure that if we used ARP money for Bath Tech and things like that, it would be easily accessible to them. It's not something that they would have to sort of jump through hoops to access.
There's a process, but it's manageable.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank, Anita?
I just would be backing up most of what Jamie just said, just the reminder for the board that the RTI position has been in development for several years. It's something that we've had on the table since before the pandemic, talking about it and building this program up. And unlike the other positions we funded with the grants throughout the pandemic, it's one that would be needed now regardless of those grants being available or the pandemic. We'd still be here considering it, funding it regardless. And also it allows us the flexibility to use those grant funds to cover those costs that the admins have cut out of their budget very thoughtfully. And the ones that we're concerned about in particular with the CIT programs. I like that it gives the flexibility of using those funds for that rather than having to put it back into the budget.
Okay, thank you. Other comments? Really? You guys are all good? Go ahead.
Would it be possible to, instead of funding the dean position in the budget, fund the RTI position in the budget? Use the
Switch it?
yeah.
So
And
you're-
what would that impact be?
Again, I think it would go back to staffing, same kind of issues we talked about. And, from an ad team perspective, the dean of students was, I think they were close 1-2, but as far as priority, the dean of students was a greater priority.
But you're saying it would be the same issues, right? The
Yeah, I mean, as far
idea
as
of is the
longevity, yeah.
longevity, am I going to get the right candidate? I mean, it's the same discussion. Okay.
Yeah, if anyone needs to speak, please, let me wait if someone else wants to speak first. No, I'm good.
It's definitely an interesting, I mean, I've heard the same from childless people in district, as we all have throughout the years, about how, well, I don't even use the services of the school. And that's just such an interesting comment. And I do get it. But the children, if you really want to get philosophical, the children are the assets of our community. So I always find that interesting. Deb, I wanted to double check a figure. What we're talking about for a difference between with it in the local budget and with it out was about 25,000 for Woolwich. Did that sound about right? All I did was I took the differences between the two town assessments in the two different scenarios. I don't want to put you on the spot, I'm sorry. But it looks like it's about $25,000 difference for Woolwich. And then again, and I don't know that of course, we can't tell what fund year 25 is going to look like. We've got 22 positions right now being funded. And I know they're not all going to be there, but we know that over the next 2 years, we're not going to want all our social work to go away and our nursing to go away and our instructional coaching to go away. We know there will be labor negotiations. So, I mean, I understand that too. We have to be careful about not trying to predict too much, but it seems to be the writing on the wall with what we're going to be looked at. And I don't know that everyone's going to remember that we saved $25,000 when we're looking at increasing the budget by a substantial amount in a year or two. So that's just kind of what's plaguing me. So that's it on the RTI for me. I have one more question, but I want other people to have a chance to go.
From 60% up to 100 and 60% up to 1 point. one 15%, and there's a percentage increase, is that really only $25,000 then?
Yeah, because it's, if you look at the column next to it, you got the,
4.449, 4.628 versus 4.603, so yes.
For this year, okay. Which is multi-year thing.
right. Did you have another comment, Jen, before I let Lorna ask her question?
Just to clarify, so, and if we fund both positions in this budget, that means that there's not $40,000 left over of ARP money to put back into the budget for the necessary cuts in the BRTC program. That's kind of what I'm hearing, is that $40,000 is a big issue for folks. So I just wanted to be clear that if we put this, if we use the ARP money to fund an entire teaching position, that means that we would have to put in $40,000 back into the budget, which I'm guessing the $40,000 is a lot less than the entire position. So I'm just kind of want to figure out where that balance comes from.
So there's 100 that, there's 100.
You can find $40,000 in this budget, those types of things.
And it's a little bit,
Or
yeah.
miscellaneous things, if you hire somebody in a little bit lower than what we have budgeted, or.
Even if we fund the RTI position with with the federal funds, we could still find the $40,000 in the budget somewhere to cover those expenses?
and I also don't know that, I mean, we use 40,000 because that's what we, we talked about cutting 100,000. We ended up cutting 104 or reducing to 140,000. But again, we don't know what the prices are going to be come the fall. How much principals are going to need, if anything. Some schools might need some help, some may not. So that 40,000 could be 10,000. It could be 25,000. We don't know. But like Deb said, I think again, there may be some breathing room in the regular budget and also in ARP, regardless of what we do. There, again, depends on the number.
If we came up short, could we use the $800,000 in the balance forward to answer any of those things, Patrick? Would that be allowed, or is that not? Because
We've already lowered the beginning balance down to 800,000.
okay.
And that will go lower each year as we spend most of our budget. So like this year, we won't have that type of a fund balance like we did last year because we're spending.
Okay. Lorna, you said you had a question.
I did. I just wanted, and again, I'm sorry if you talked about it last week, but the only other thing that I couldn't find or wasn't clear is I know when we had our cost center reviews with department heads, athletics had, I think it was in this year's asks, had asked for a second coach or a assistant coach for cross country because the size of the team had grown, and they were splitting a stipend as it was, and it's co-ed team. Just wondering, Deborah said this is not, two coaches are not in this budget, correct? Okay. And is that something that would be flexible potentially if they needed it? It's one of our biggest teams. That's right? And it's like one coach.
What's the cost on that? Do you know?
That I don't remember. That I don't have with me, but.
Last year, they split the stipend.
Right.
This year, they're not.
Right.
So.
There's just one person. Right. I was just curious because I didn't want to lose sight of just we're talking so much about COVID relief. And if we have an athletic situation with lots of kids running through the woods or through the town and through the city, it doesn't leave a whole lot of time for coaching when there's not another pair of eyes. So that was what I was just wondering where that was at.
Yeah, like Deb said, it's not in here now. I mean, we've been fortunate sometimes to have a volunteer help with different teams, and we've made some exceptions with trying not to cut students the last couple of years during COVID as well and make it work, but it's not in here.
were able to remove one stipend this year for assistant wrestling and not use it for another position because of the enrollment size, so maybe something like that would take care of itself.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I know you guys have heard me talk about this, but the other thing I foresee on the future is an SRO for middle school, and I know that's not in here. So I just didn't want to lose sight of that either. If we're not putting it in this year, I think we have to seriously find a way to fund that next year. And that's not going to be grant money either, I would say. So that was my other last thought. Thanks.
Great, thank you for that. Any other comments, questions? Doesn't sound like it. So I think we're at a place where, I mean, we've heard where we're at with everything. If we would have to propose one, well, we don't have to do anything, but we have to propose some kind of something tonight. It sounds like, and tell me if I'm wrong, I'm hearing more people would want to put to the motion the 3.57%, which would include 2 positions. Is that what I'm hearing? If that's the case, then we can put it to a vote and see where it goes. But I would ask, I guess I have to officially read this, right?
No,
Or not till after?
We just need someone to make a motion.
Well, she needs to make the motion first, and then I would do that.
We would just do what version and take a vote on that first.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I just didn't know if I had to
No.
read that. Okay. So that you have the motion, so if you feel comfortable doing that, Lorna, you can.
But I would actually take a vote on which version of the budget.
Which version of the budget?
Take a vote on that first, sorry.
So we need a motion for that first, I guess. Just which version we want to vote on.
So my motion would be to take a vote on the version with a 3.57% local contribution to fund both the RTI coordinator and Dean of Students.
And do I have a second? Second by Bill, thank you. Any further discussion? Yes, Jen.
I'd just like to make a point, the fact that Woolwich has had the highest average percentage increase from any other town. Historically, if you look at the bottom of the page, I just wanted to make sure that was kind of aware of everyone. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that information, then any other discussion? And then all in favor of voting that we will be voting on this particular version? What do we have? And opposed? Okay, so 1 opposed, the rest are for it. So that's the one we're going to be voting on. And now we can vote on the, so now we're the vote to call and approve the warrants for the fiscal year 2023 school budget. And Lorna, if you can read the motion.
I move that the vote entitled Vote to Call and Approve the Warrants for the Budget Meeting and the Budget Validation Referendum and to authorize the notice of amounts adopted be approved in form presented to this meeting and that a copy of said vote be included within the minutes of this meeting. Vote to call and approve the warrants for the budget meeting and the budget validation referendum and to authorize the notice of amounts adopted. Voted, the warrant for the RSU number 1, the regional school unit budget meeting presented to the meeting be approved and that a regional school unit budget meeting be called for May 31st, 2022 for the purpose of voting on the annual budget for the regional school unit for the 22-23 fiscal year. That the warrant and notice of election for the regional school unit budget validation referendum presented to this meeting be approved and that a regional school unit budget validation referendum be called for June 14th, 2022 for the purpose of approving the budget adopted at the regional school unit budget meeting for the 2022-2023 fiscal year and considering whether to continue the budget validation referendum process. And that the form of notice of amounts adopted at budget meeting presented to this meeting be approved and that the superintendent of schools of the regional school unit be authorized and directed to complete said notice in accordance with the regional school unit budget meeting on May 31st, 2022, and to cause copies of said notice as completed to be delivered to the municipal clerks of each municipality of the regional school unit for posting at the polling places for the June 14th, 2022 Regional School Unit Budget Validation Referendum.
All right. Well said. And do I have a second for that? Okay, Meg seconds it. Thank you. So now we have that. Before we put it to a vote, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? And all opposed? Okay, we have one opposed, the rest in favor, it passes. And then what else do we have to do?
No, we can adjourn. We're just going to need you to sign the back of this and then sign 4 other documents that Deb's bringing by to you.
Okay.
But besides that, we're.
Or otherwise we can adjourn? Okay, motion to adjourn? Yes?
I make the motion to adjourn.
We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.